automation and fine tuning, this is about really where the mix really pulls together. So the automation is there so that you can weave all of the instrumentation in and around each other, because the levels pull things forward or backward, right? So now we can work with that dynamically, because maybe we want the acoustic guitars to sound up front for certain section of the song, but more in the back for another section. So we will ride them up or down for different levels. If we want the vocal to sound very present, we may do a lot of rides that bring up the articulation of all the individual words that may be lost in the back. We're going to automate delays and effects, right? So that we have certain words, right, or certain parts of a phrase we want to have fed into delays so they feed off. You have to be very careful, right? Because those delays have to have a space in the mix to exist. If there's too much other stuff going on, then you won't hear the delay because it'll be masked or covered up by the other elements of the mix. So you're weaving the instrumentation, right, together, right? And you're moving things in and out. Maybe the piano needs to be out front for the verse section, right? So it sounds like the vocalist behind a piano singing, right? But then when you get to the chorus section, it's full and rich and big with string instruments, right? That opens up the back, right? And so the automation is all about creating dynamics, right? One of the ways, especially with pop music, that you create dynamics in sound is not just with the individual performances, but how you manipulate things, right? And this is so critical. So if you listen to a lot of mixes and you start doing mix mapping, you'll notice a lot of techniques that are used where things are very mono in the verse. It's a vocal, it's a simple drum beat, a percussion, and a bass, right? And it's kind of doing like a very thin bass, and it's kind of doing its basic thing, and it's all very focused in the middle. And then when you get to the pre-chorus section, all of a sudden there's a synth that comes in that opens things up left, right. And now all of a sudden you have this stereo shakers that are out to the side and this instrument that spreads the width. So the dynamic change is from things being mostly mono and centered, all of a sudden they're wider and spread out, okay? But still relatively thin. And then when you get to the chorus, right, all of a sudden you get this big thick bass that drops in and opens up, and now the sound sinks down to the floor, and you put in this reverb and all these instruments that kind of fill out the back end, and the mix goes down and back, right? And then you get all of this size. And the way that that size is set up is by the way that you automate the instrumentation leading up. You're setting up the effect of things being big. So the problem most people have with mixes is that they try to make the whole mix sound big, and therefore you lose the sense of bigness. What you have to do is the way you set up bigness is by creating smallness that creates the contrast, so when that bigness occurs, you really feel it, right? And so you can do that by panning, width, moving instruments up and down, right? The low end of that bass, sinking the instrument down, right? The added presence, bringing things up, the reverb and the effects that you do, sending things to the rear, right? And then when you got all this size and all this reverb and this bigness, and you go back to the verse, everything sucks right back to the middle and very dry and focused and up front. And that effect of that movement, that dynamic change, you could do it very subtly. I'm giving you an extreme example, right? But you can do that in subtle ways, and those subtle ways help to enhance the message and the effect of the song. And that's where automation, you can't make a professional sounding finished mix without automation. You can't do it. I've never been able to do it. You can't do it, right? It's extraordinarily difficult. The automation is what weaves or pulls the thing together that makes it breathe, that brings it to life, right? So now you're young Frankenstein, right? So you're getting that lightning bolt into it, right? That thing that at the right time, with the full moon and all the other stuff, young Frankenstein, right? You get the whole thing, right? Right? And then your monster comes to life, right? That's what automation is, right? That's what automation is, right? It's pulling everything out and taking all the stuff that you've done, right, with all the other stuff and making it come to life, right? So that's really the whole key there.